And we're into chapter 10. So we're looking at the agreement. These chapters now, as we get through the week, chapter 11, 12, we're going to look at each of the elements of a contract. So the introduction, contracts are voluntary agreements between the parties. One party makes an offer that's accepted by the other. What are those called again? I'll pretend you all out there said offeror and offeree. Without mutual assent, there's no contract. An agreement's legal definition is the manifestation by two or more persons of the substance of a contract. It requires mutual assent, aka agreement, to perform current or future contractual duties. Facebook case, you can look at that one. They went through a settlement. Do you believe the agreement was enforceable? I will give 5 extra credit points to anyone that sends me a Canvas message saying whether or not they believe the settlement was enforceable. Settlement agreement was enforceable in this Facebook case. The offer is the manifestation of a willingness to enter into a bargain, so may as to justify another person in understanding that his assent to that bargain is invited and will conclude it. The only party who makes an offer is the offeror, and the party whom the offer is made is the offeree. It requires an effective offer. So what is an effective offer? The offeror must objectively intend to be bound. The terms of the offer must be definite and reasonably certain, and the offer must be communicated to the offeree. So if you're just sitting around saying, I think I'd give $1 million for that house, but you never actually call the owners of the house, you're not making a valid offer. The objective theory of contracts states that the intent to contract is judged by the reasonable person standard and not by a subjective intent of the parties. So if it's not rational or reasonable, the court's going to throw it out. The express terms of an offer must be clear enough to the offeree to be able to decide whether or not to accept or reject. So they have to be clear. If they're ambiguous, it's not going to help. An offer must contain the following terms. It must have an identification of the parties, an identification of the subject matter and quantity, and it must be paid. How are we getting payment for the consideration? There can also be a time limitation. This must be answered within a year or within, a week, however long, 30 days. Implied terms are where the court steps in and can supply missing terms if a reasonable term can be implied. Okay? Terms supplied in that way are called implied. So you say, I am selling my 1995 vehicle for $5,000. And you own 2 vehicles, but only one of them is in 1995. The court can imply that Chevy Silverado was the vehicle you intended to contract. We can look at the general release of martyr signed, whether or not the martyr contract to avoid being bound by the terms of this acting agreement was valid or not. Special offers. We're going to look at advertisements, rewards, and auctions. So an advertisement is the offeror to come in and spend money on a certain item. So let's say paper towels are on sale. You are putting out an offer that is accepted only by performance. So it's a unilateral contract to purchase paper towels. A reward, again, unilateral contract entering into only if you find the particular item listed in the reward. It's a request or a statement of entering into a contract. And then auctions, your book talks about 2 types of auctions. So an auction with a price limit or a non-limit contract. So a contract with a minimum is going to be a valid contract because without a minimum is going to be a valid contract because if you offer, you're accepting. Now, if there is a limit, meaning you have to spend a certain amount, it is just a an invitation to offer because they are not bound if they do not make it up to a certain amount. A termination of an offer. So remember, this is not the termination of a contract, it's just the termination of an offer. A revocation is when the offer is withdrawn by the offeror and it terminates. A rejection would be by the offeree to say, no, I'm not interested. And a counteroffer is going to reject the initial contract and put in new terms to the counter. The termination of by law would be something like if the subject matter is destroyed, the death of either party, if the offer is illegal, so superseding illegality, or a lapse in time. So let me give you an example. Let's say marijuana was legal and then becomes illegal again. If you were in a contract bound when it was legal, it wasn't a void contract, but now because it is illegal, it would become void. Acceptance would be obviously if the offer is not terminated and both parties intend on the terms of the offer in the manner inviting or required by the offer as measured by the objective theory of contracts. So I will buy your 500 widgets for $500. It's accepted. The unequivocal acceptance is clear and unambiguous, only one possible meaning, and it must not contain any conditions or exceptions. So very clear, I'm taking what you requested. Mirror image rule means you must accept exactly as the terms state. Silence is an acceptance. So occasionally silence will count as an acceptance. The offer indicates that silence means mutual assent. So if I don't hear from you by 5 o'clock on Monday, we enter into a contract. There has to be some other dealings to indicate that silence is acceptable. So maybe you both are merchants and you've done this several different times. Then the court will bind you by silence. Otherwise, you're not going to be bound by silence. Time acceptance. So let's say you have a certain amount by 5 o'clock Friday. If we're looking at the mailbox rule, acceptance is effective when it is dispatched. So when it is put in the mail, even if it's lost in transmission. This does not apply if an offeror first dispatches a rejection and then sends an acceptance. So remember, clear cut, I'm accepting, it's in the mail. Now, in theory, the mailbox rule means when you mail it. In practice, I will tell you guys, call the offeror and tell them you accept and that it's in the mail so they know it's coming. Mode of acceptance. So you can do implied authorization or express authorization. Again, in practice, call them and accept it. Any questions? Shoot me an email. And any questions on any of the assignments, let me know.